Starting your own practice is hard for many chiropractors. It's riddled with both struggles and successes. But here at the Chiropractic Philanthropist, we make it easy by having chiropreneurs and entrepreneurs share their struggles and lessons learned in life and business so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. And now here's your host, Dr. Ed Osborne.
What is it that trips up your office? Finding new patients, retention, teaching about holistic wellness, or is it patients who can't seem to kick poor health practices? As a business owner, a wellness practitioner, a teacher, a mentor, often an emotional support, as chiropractors, we have a lot to carry. Let Mahalo Wellness carry some of the burden. Mahalo Wellness CBD oil products are the one small change that can change both your clinic revenue and jumpstart your patients' crave to begin healthier living. Try all Mahalo has to offer to determine what is receptive in your clinic. Special pricing on 10-bottle and 20-bottle bundles. Head to mahalowellness.com/collections/TCP-podcast today. All right, TCP listeners, we have an incredible guest today, and that is actually Dr. Shara Downey. Dr. Shara, how are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you.
So I know you. I've gotten the chance to know you quite well, actually, over the last year or so. But for our listeners who don't know you, why don't you share a little bit about who you are, and also, how you're actually starting, coming up as one of the leaders in our profession as well.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, thanks for having me. And I would just want to start out to say I'm excited to be here. I live overseas, and so it can at times feel alone and very solo. So it's wonderful to be connected with the community. After graduating from chiropractic college, I had this funny notion that I should work overseas, and it was supposed to be a 2-year stint. And now 15 years later and 4 kids, I think we're cemented here, we're planted. So I've had the pleasure of being in Singapore. I've worked a little bit in Malaysia, and a lot of people ask why I came here. And when I look back, I think that the opportunities I had in Australia or the UK, very similar to Canada. And so I wanted to keep moving. I wanted to keep moving east. And I do recall that back in high school, I did a few missions trips in Thailand and other Asian countries. So kind of had always been on my heart, had always been a place of that had a bit of specialness for me. So when the opportunity came up for Singapore, I kind of jumped at it.
We love, at the Chiropractic Philanthropist, we love affirmations, quotes, words of positivity that we can drop on Doc. So Doc, why don't you share some, whether it's a quote or an affirmation, something that are words of meaning to you?
Oh, great. Thank you so much. So I had a hard time with this question because I was thinking about affirmations that I use, and they do change at times, but the one that I always come back to is every day, in every way, I am abundant and impactful. And that's super important to me because one of the purposes for me is that I'm helping other people in their lives, whether it just be for education or helping families get healthier, or helping other practitioners get better and running their practices. But I want to have impact. I want to leave this earth with a bit of legacy and knowing that I've done my best to help other people do better as well. So those words are really, really important for me. And I think going through negative times, or if you have a bit of a down slump, you have to give your brain a reset. And that idea that every day in every way, things are changing and change can be better. All right. Like, we're not giving our brain anything specific. We're letting it search for the positive, has been super helpful for me.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that. I mean, and kind of that's a perfect transition into this next part of the podcast, is really just about, those times that we're in the slump. And for the docs who are listening, we all actually experience that. So everyone at some time, especially in practice, you're going to feel that time where you feel the resistance, or you feel like you're in the pit. But was there ever a time, Doc, where you felt like, you fell flat on your face, and, what you learned from that experience and how you apply it to your business, or even with the people that you coach today?
Oh, thanks. Well, there's more than one time. So it's not like it's only a one-time occurrence, but the biggest one I can remember, especially in practice, is after the birth of my second son, and I have four 4 kids. So this
Mm.
is a little while ago. I took what I thought was normal called maternity leave. And I had a doctor come in, we had transitioned her. And of course, it was my second son. So I thought, oh, I got this in the bag. I know exactly what I'm doing. And I mean, within 4 weeks, we lost 70% of our practice,
Oh my gosh.
70% of our sales. I had to come back to work very quickly. Now, I know in different countries, there's different maternity leave. Here in Singapore, we get up to 4 months. But running your own practice, of course, you can't always have that luxury. So I tried to set it up like my first son, where I was actually off for half time for a year. So I thought it would be that easy, and it really fell very quickly. And to come back from that is not as easy, right? So it falls
Yeah.
faster than it is to rebuild it. And I remember there were days where I just had to shut my brain off. It was like a Bloomberg ticker tape of all the negativity and people calling and bills and not being able to pay staff. And I literally had to have affirmations that I would use as mantras through every adjustment. Like it was
Mm.
probably my best adjusting time because I was more silent. I was having them breathe and focus and really internalize onto their own bodies. And in doing that, I was with them, I was breathing and just speaking the mantras in my mind to keep my brain off the negativity. Like it was that focused I had to be for 6 months because I knew it was
Mm.
going to change. I knew it could. We had things in the works. My clinic manager and I really got together and worked stuff out. But of course, it doesn't change overnight. And that idea of, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay rent this month? Or how am I going to pay staff? It does kind of want to consume you. And to stop it, I had to just change the messaging.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh man, that's so powerful. So like every adjustment you had to really almost like kind of reset, or every person that you saw, so to keep yourself in state.
Absolutely.
Oh my
Absolutely. Like
gosh.
I really, really, it got down to that point of focus. So every morning you walk into the clinic, you have a state change with staff, you have a
Hmm.
reset in the practice. But okay, oh, great, you feel excellent, you adjust 2 or 3 people. But if you have a bit of a break, the mind goes crazy. So it was like every
Hmm.
minute I stepped into the adjusting room, stepped to that person, it was almost like I was breathing power through my hands. And I know that might sound crazy for people, but you're
Hmm.
breathing that healing power of focus because I didn't want my distraction to be coming out of me onto them.
Wow, that's so powerful, and I'm going to encourage doctors to think about that too, is to have those little touchstones and those rituals, you could say, that keep you
Mhm.
grounded. And it reminds me, because it's been so long since I've practiced, if it hasn't been that long, but it feels like a long time. I had the 4 agreements actually on every adjusting station. So we would put it right next to the screen, the LCD screen, and um, gosh, who's the author? So it's Don Miguel Ruiz.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it was like, be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best.
Mhm.
And the one that always resonated, or the one I always had to check in on, was don't take anything personally.
Yeah,
Or,
definitely.
yeah, I mean, I always like, there were always those moments where, I would, maybe if a patient challenged me in some way,
Mhm.
or you never know what's going on in their day or their life, and you assume it has something to do with you, but sometimes you just need to give both yourself grace and that
Yeah.
patient possibly. So I love that. I love that you had those, like, that individual little ritual that you would do every time. So I would like to hear a little bit more. I've been following and kind of watching what you're doing online,
Mhm.
and I'd like to know a little bit more about common sense practice. So tell us the impetus of that, and also then what you're doing around
Well, thank you very much for asking because sometimes the most wonderful things are born from necessity, if you will.
that. Mm.
So I've been in practice for 15 years, and off and on, I've had practitioners who are in practice, but they'll come and they'll work with us in the clinic for a couple of weeks just to see how we run things, or they'll come and do events with us if we're doing any kind of health talks and that kind of thing. And over the years, people have asked questions like, you don't really advertise, you don't really market. How come you have so many patients? How come people are returning? Or in Singapore, we do prepaid. So we have a lot of prepaid packages.
Hmm.
And what seems normal for me and how I communicate with my patients and my staff, I learned very quickly is not so normal.
Hmm.
And so I love high touch, high communication, high connection. I mean, I've had patients that knew me before I was married, and I've been married 12 years, and now I have 4 kids. And they've sat and watched and been patient through that whole progress. And so to have that kind of connection with people, I love, and people are healing and they're getting their whole families in. So this idea of sharing what we do in our practice, but also really what other inspiring people are doing in the practice, in the profession, kind of came together for this Common Sense Practice podcast. Because what I realized is a lot of these people that are doing excellent are under stones, and we're not always hearing their stories or how they're doing it. And it's not necessarily for new practitioners, it's for anyone, because at many times we're changing, we're rebranding, we're changing our focus in our practice. I know once I started having kids, our family practice grew like crazy. Initially, we had a lot more sports. So your own practice will evolve. And so hearing stories of inspiration and maybe things that other people did that might work well for you where you're at now is kind of where this podcast came from.
I love it. How did you come up with the name? I mean, because well, to me, it's like, well, this is like, it's not really common sense. It should be common sense in
It
a lot of the
should be.
things that we do, but it's not,
Yeah.
isn't it? We like to make things very complicated, not common sense.
Definitely. And it's exactly how it came up. So I was talking with my accountability partners. I have a few partners in different industries, and we get together once a month, talk about our businesses. And I was struggling with this idea of how to communicate what I wanted to share. And I was just like, I don't get it. Like, these things are such common sense. And how do people not know this? And they both just stopped and they looked at me and they were like, that's the name.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Because, and like it's actually in even in like marketing, or I guess like, funnels, like we call funnels, like, and you get these complex funnels. And the funny thing about the more complex they are, the more things that can go wrong, but also just, they don't work. It's like the simple, common, the things that just seem to make the most common sense are the ones that work the best. But
And they commonly are what you can do best as well. That's what I
right.
think people forget, is what you find easy and you can do well. Don't discard it because it's not fancy like what other people are doing. Because trying to do what someone else is doing may not work for you. What comes easy to you, expand on that.
Yeah. So what are some of the discussions that you have on your podcast then? Like, what are some of the topics that you've covered lately?
Well, some of the common ones, of course, people want to know what they do for marketing and, how to do your email marketing and that kind of thing. But I think the more interesting ones, we had a doc recently who was talking about just the ultimate customer service. Now, that sounds like a simple concept, but there's a lot of practices that do not use it, right? It's more about numbers, high numbers, churn and burn. And the idea that you actually service someone just a little bit more can actually be better for your bottom line, frankly, and as well as for word of mouth and for referrals. So that was a super interesting one. I've had a lot of people on the podcast who are advocates for chiropractic who aren't even chiropractors, but they're out there very loud and proud and in charge. We had a lady, a nutritionist from Sweden, and she's been practicing there like as a nutritionist for 15 years, and she's a clinic manager, and she's one of the greatest chiropractic advocates.
Wow.
So these fabulous people that are, like I said, under rocks that we don't know about, that are really helping the profession grow globally.
I mean, I clearly I love podcasting. I mean, this is my zone, I guess you could say. But I love that there's so many, people like yourself, so many leaders, and so many like inside of our profession, or, service providers in general, that are coming up and doing these types of podcasts and doing these discussions to help, really just help doctors become better doctors, but also become better business people. And
Yes.
yeah, I love that. So if I'm someone who's listening right now and I want to go find out more about your podcast, I want to listen or connect, possibly even just connect with you, how do I do that?
So for the podcast, we're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're on Comcast. So we're the
Great.
Common Sense Practice. And if you want to connect with me directly, feel free, like on Facebook, just Dr. Shara Downey is our business page, can send us a message. All of my information is there.
Beautiful. All right. So listeners, you can actually head over to thechiropracticphilanthropist.com. We'll have a webpage dedicated to our discussion with Dr. Shara Downey as well today, and the resources that she's provided here. So how to connect with her on Facebook, but also her podcast and any of the resources she's going to drop in a moment too. So what I want to do is I'm going to take you and I'm going to put you in our TCP time machine. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right, let's do this. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to send you back to a younger version of yourself. This is right after you came out of chiropractic college. You have all the experience, the knowledge and life experience you have today. What would you say to that younger self?
Awesome. I love it. So probably two things. Number one, it's okay to say no.
Mm.
I think initially when we're first in practice or even just out of school, we're panicked and we think that the world's going to end if things don't go quickly for us. And so we take every opportunity and say yes to many things that are not right for us, which either can lead you down a very dark path for a long time or really just get you off course.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing I would say, and this one's come to me more recently, if you were not a chiropractor today and you were finishing your career, who would you want to hang out with and have coffee with out of all of the patients that you've served?
Hmm.
Because then those are the people you should focus on working with and build your practice around.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I love it. Um, One of the things that I love about this podcast too, and I keep saying I'm going to do this, is I'm going to put together like a list of all the resources and the value bombs that people have dropped over the years. It would be a massively, like, it would be a whole book in itself. But what I
Mhm.
want to do is like ask you for either a book that you've read or that
Yeah.
you believe everyone should read. It could be an app, could be a podcast, it could be anything that you think that docs should go out and seek and just digest right now.
It's an oldie but a goodie, but it's called The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scofield Shinn. And it's in that era of the Napoleon Hill and
Mm-hmm.
when these wonderful thought leaders were around, where they're building from literally nothing. I think nowadays we have so many options and resources, we're almost to the point of confusion. And
Mm-hmm.
the way they built things in life that were legacy, that were empires, were built half on faith and half on, belief, right? Before you even are seeing signs of things. So this book is amazing, and it's on audio and it's free. It's on YouTube. I mean,
Oh,
it's
cool.
it's on Amazon. It's everywhere. But really, the principles in there are fantastic, and it has a lot to do with your own mindset when you're going into a project, but how you stay strong in a project and consistent, because not everything happens overnight, like in a 30-minute sitcom. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
it's a really great one.
Yeah. And so I'm going to kind of go off script here. So, you know, I mean, clearly, like you're like, hey, you can go listen to this or you can buy the book probably, but you sound like you're someone who, your zone is audio. Like, I mean, clearly I'm assuming, but that's you,
Yes.
you're doing podcasts. So
Yeah.
what was it about doing a podcast that attracted you to doing that? I mean, was it because you already listened to podcasts and that's how you absorb a lot of content, or was it because like, no, that's the wave of the future, or what was it that inspired you?
So whether good times or bad times, I'm a big believer in keeping that mindset and the Bloomberg ticker tape of the brain healthy
Mm,
and positive. So from the start of practice, it was like CDs that I was listening to, whether it was
mm,
affirmations or at that time chiropractic education. Then it was podcasting. Then it was just books on tape. But anything that would just basically flood my brain with positivity through the audio medium so that I could be doing something else, whether it's like cooking or training or driving or riding my bike, whatever. My
yeah.
brain was always being flooded with positive. And so I love books on tape because I don't always have time to sit down with a book. I have 4 kids, but that can
Mm-hmm.
be playing in the background. They can listen to that. And I've had great conversations with my kids because of it, right? Like they think Napoleon Hill lives today. They have
Yeah.
no idea that he's not around. So and I just love that idea that when you're not really consciously thinking of something and you're focused on something else, you're still feeding yourself positive. So
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of where it started. The other thing is for myself, when I record notes or thoughts, or if I have inspirations in the middle of the night, I get up and I record into my phone. I don't
Oh,
have time
interesting.
to write it down because my brain's going too fast. And again, when I've had 4 kids, I've breastfed these kids, so I'm up in the middle of the night a lot over the last 8 years, and I would get flying pangs of inspiration and thought, and I just verbally put it in my phone. And so for me, that seems like a fast way to deliver information as well as to receive it.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's a great tip as well. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have that inspiration for a moment, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just remember that I'm going to do that later, and then I go back. I'm like, oh, what was it that
Mm-hmm.
brilliant idea that that I can't remember now?
Yeah.
So thank you for that. That's awesome. All right, listeners, you can head over to thechiropracticphilanthropist.com. Again, we're going to have a webpage dedicated to our discussion today with Dr. Shara. We'll have all the resources as well. I encourage you to reach out to her. Very fascinating person. I would want to like learn more about practicing in Singapore. It sounds pretty. It sounds really sounds like a really exotic kind of way to practice versus what, where I was in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
Well, very different. We don't have snow, much to my
Exactly.
kids' chagrin.
So yeah, thank you so much for being on the show. I love having inspiring guests such as yourself on, and thank you so much for giving back.
No, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
So you've heard the struggles, you've heard the successes, and this episode is done. But there's still so much more to come and so much more to learn. Head on over to the chiropracticphilanthropist.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive free practice building tips and strategies, including how to market your practice with your very own podcast and so much more. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Chiropractic Philanthropist.